And it looks like we might be up and running here. I didn't even realize we were live. So there you go. Let me make sure I don't have the sound doubling back on you guys. Well, welcome to the Ed Morrissey Show. Sort of. Well, at any rate, welcome to the Ed Morrissey Show. I am here. I am live. And I don't know what's going on with the Facebook thing. I've had problems all week with it. Cranky T-Rex over in the crankytrex.com/chat is our chat room. And I'll put that link over here on the YouTube side. Was saying that the Hot Air page has a live stream of the White House press briefing going on. And that is... And that might be conflicting with it. I'll have to talk with the guys. I'll have to talk with the powers that be on that because I actually don't know how that works, doesn't work, etc. But at any rate, we have this, and we also have Twitter as a backup. So and we've tried both of them in the past. I still think that. Severe says, watch what you say, this is going to get archived. Well, the same thing's true over Facebook, right? But I still think that the issue may be my login over at Facebook. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I'll check with the guys. All right, so we're talking about the podcast, which did drop today. By the way, podcast episode is now up and running. And it's the dipstick demagoguery, I think, is how I described Joe Biden's comments on the oil industry and also his comments yesterday about gas station owners. And so I'm sorry, I was just a little distracted because I'm trying to make sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to be. I pod regularly. I pod twice a week. I haven't missed... I missed when I was on vacation, I think. But I mean, other than that, I usually have something to put up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you go to Hot Air, if you're new to this, if you go to hotair.com and you look at the top of the page, the Ed Morrissey Show will have the latest podcast available. So today's podcast is fun. We've got Dwayne Patterson, as we always do on Thursday mornings, almost always. Then I have Ann McElhaney, who is a filmmaker who has partnered with her partner, her husband, Phelan McAleer, on a number of great films. And she is starting a new true crime podcast called serialkillerpod.com. Serialkillerpod.com. It's about the Gosnell case, and I think they're planning 5 or 6 episodes. But I mean, they know Gosnell, and they're rolling it out this week because, of course, we're waiting for the Dobbs decision. And the Dobbs decision should be coming down, might be even tomorrow. I still kind of think it's going to come out on Monday or Thursday of next week. I did double check this. Monday is so far the last scheduled decision day, but they could add another one. They have 9 cases left. They could do 4 or 5 tomorrow and do the remaining 4 or 5 on Monday. I still think that they're better off dropping this one last or as close to last as possible because Alito is the, unless something's changed, Alito is the author of this. And I think Breyer, I know the Chief Justice has seniority just on the basis, ex officio. But I think Breyer has seniority over him. I know Thomas has seniority over him. So if you've got decisions that involve more senior jurists, it won't be the last decision. But of course, we're just talking about a difference of a few minutes, basically. Jeff Dunnett says the technical issues today are my fault. I told the people on the Shaftline report that you gave me the candidate idea. They need time to mobilize the National Guard. Well, I mean, they've had plenty of time to do that. I would have, if that's the issue, I would have dropped it a few decision days ago and not giving anybody a chance to get organized for it. So clearly that's not on their minds. put up a wall in front of Kavanaugh's house or his former house. Yeah, I'm wondering how, I mean, I don't know who'd buy it at this point either. I mean, that's the problem. So you have to find somebody who's willing to buy it while you got all those nutcases that are targeting the people who are going to end up living there. I mean, that stuff doesn't get scrubbed off the internet. So, anyway, great conversations with Austin Roos, too, of the Center for Family, cfam.org, c-fam.org. And I know I'm going to screw this up, so I'm just going to look it up real quickly while we're here. c-fam.org. And I've talked to him a few times on, Center for Family and Human Rights, primarily focused, I think, on international relations, dealing with, family-related issues. These days, primarily abortion, but also euthanasia and some of the other, Mexico City policy, those sorts of things. But they do a lot of work, on domestic politics as well, especially on those issues. And Austin's a great guy. And he is, I know that Peter Grandich has the best credibility bookshelf in the business, and he really does. It's pretty awesome. And it's not a mock-up, right? That's not a green screen. That's his actual cabinetry there with all of his memorabilia on it. But Austin Roos has a pretty darn good credibility bookshelf behind him too. So you got to check that out. All right. So if you guys have any questions or comments, either about the podcast, which only just dropped not long ago. So I would say you probably haven't had a chance to even to even look at it. But I'm happy to talk about the topics involved. I'm happy to talk about the Bruen case today, which I think went maybe about as good as I thought it could possibly have gotten. And I think that the reaction to it is about as nutty as it possibly could be, especially Jeffrey Toobin. And I've got a post up about that. I've also got something coming up later about the Department of Justice's really oddball, non sequitur response to Bruen, which has nothing at all to do with federal statutes, federal law enforcement. The Department of Justice had nothing to do with this. Moreover, the Department of Justice never submitted, at least as far as I can tell off of the Supreme Court website, it doesn't look like the Department of Justice filed any amici briefs on this. So, yeah. And Supply Guy says, the left doesn't want us to openly gloat on the Second Amendment Supreme Court decision today, so they sabotaged Ed. Yeah, I don't think that was really the case. But I'm happy to feel that important. I'm very happy to feel that important. You know what I've noticed here is that on YouTube, the picture is the exposure level is a lot higher on YouTube. It's not anywhere near that high on my end. Samir Cruz, conservative, says, question, Ed, in what ways did Roberts and Kavanaugh depart from the Thomas opinion? I have not read articles carefully. They didn't really depart from it, right? I mean, this is a concurrence, and not even a dissent, or it's not even a dissent in part. What they wanted to emphasize was that this was really limited to the question of may issue permit laws rather than shall issue permit laws. But Thomas's decision made that pretty clear, too. I think that they just really wanted to make sure that that point was reemphasized. So that, and if you're not familiar, I'm sure Severe is, but for those who are not familiar with the difference between the two, 43 states have what's known as shall issue permit laws. And shall issue permit laws require the state to grant a carry permit to an applicant unless there is a good reason not to do so, right? A conviction, a felony conviction, some sort of red flag laws will come into play here when states have them. A commitment due to mental illness, that sort of thing. Otherwise, if they apply for it, they have to pass a background check. But if they pass all the requirements, the state is required to issue them the carry permit. May issue states require the applicant to carry the burden of proof of why they should be granted a carry permit. And in New York, as in Hawaii, you have to present them with a good reason why you want to carry a pistol, a firearm of some sort, while you're in public. And it's really up to whichever whichever police department or bureaucrat is in charge of this to determine whether they're going to allow you to get the permit or not. And it's very whimsical. It's very arbitrary. It's really about, do they think that you have a good reason for doing so? And that's not a basis on which you exercise an enumerated constitutional right. The burden of proof really should be on the government to demonstrate why there is a rational reason that is evenly applied to everybody as to why you can't exercise that particular right. So Roberts and Kavanaugh just were re-emphasizing the fact that this doesn't impact other forms of regulation, which feeds into that, right? It doesn't have to do with background checks. It doesn't have to do with age restrictions, although that may come up separately down the road, because there's a case in Florida and a case in California where the Supreme Court's probably going to have to take a look at that. And in fact, Alito actually specifically mentioned the age restriction, a federal age restriction on purchases of firearms, which I forgot about when I was writing something else. So I have to go back and take a look at that. So noting that it doesn't actually impact this doesn't actually impact that. All it impacts is this may issue versus shall issue problem. I could say issue over again. It gets a little confusing and redundant when you have to come up with a synonym for issue. And just some states don't even require you to have a permit, right? There's 25 states now, I think, that have what's called constitutional carry. But most, if not all of those states also have laws regarding carry permits. And a carry permit, I think at least in some of those states, I know it does in Texas, an actual carry permit allows you to carry in more places than the constitutional carry law does without the permit. So you're not required to have a permit to carry a firearm in Texas unless you're going into specific protected places, in which case a permit is required in some of those cases, and in some of those places you're not allowed to carry at all. And this is another thing that Thomas himself in the opinion said, we're not here to throw out all of those sensitive places rules and regulations, but the one that New York tried to use in Bruin would basically have set up every single public space as a sensitive place. And you say you can't do that. It's too broad. If you don't want them in courthouses, that's one place. And if you say, well, you can't carry a firearm into a courthouse, that's reasonable, it's rational, it applies to everybody. And there's definitely a state interest in protecting courtrooms. You could even designate schools that way, but I think as events have proven, that would be bad. I think what you want is some of the faculty who can defend themselves and their students in case there's an attack on them. But you can't just say everywhere where people gather and police might show up, which is what the New York law was, is a sensitive place, and therefore you can't carry without special permission to do so. You can't do that. It's too broad. It's like the proverbial ammunition ban. It doesn't work. It's unconstitutional. So that's the difference, Severe. It's a good question, too, because when I first saw it, I was thinking, wow, I don't understand this. And then I kind of realized, well, they're just it doesn't really hew out any new ground. It just shores up what Thomas is already saying in the opinion. And I think they just felt the need to emphasize it because they knew what the blowback was going to be. And even though they wrote that, you still had idiots like Jeffrey Toobin getting on the air and saying, this is, they're throwing out all the regulations. They are arguing that people should be able to carry everywhere and without regulations, which is absolutely nonsense. Haven't read your article. Can you summarize the DOJ non sequitur? Well, actually, that article isn't up. At least I hope it's not. It's not supposed to be up. Let me just double check to make sure that hasn't gone up. No, it hasn't. Whew, thank you. I did mention it though, and that post will be going up in the evening. And the Department of Justice said that they respectfully disagree with the Supreme Court on Bruin and that they plan to continue enforcing federal law. And so what? Who's stopping you? In fact, the Department of Justice doesn't have a very good track record of enforcing federal law when it comes to failed, failed gun applications, firearm applications. They very rarely follow up on those because you're not even supposed to attempt to purchase a weapon if you're prohibited from doing so. That in itself is a crime. And they don't prosecute it, which would certainly be one way to make sure that you don't have people trying to game systems and purchase weapons illegally. And if you're going to enforce a background check system, you should be enforcing that law. They don't do that. They very, very rarely will prosecute those. The second thing is that they could enforce 18 USC 1507 and protect those justices. But yes. Jeff Dennett says, judging by the reaction of New York Governor Kathy Hochul, she's too mentally disturbed to get a gun. Well, Tubin too, for that matter. I mean, that 1 minute clip from Tubin that I had up on the website, I think every single word in that is untrue, including the and the. I didn't see one thing in there that was even approximately true about the Bruen decision. And it was very clear that he didn't even bother to read the Bruen decision. He was just out there to emote. And this is CNN's chief legal analyst. That's his title. It's on the screen. You can see it on the screen while he's doing this little rant. And I mean, he's not even a good political analyst, let alone a legal analyst. You would expect that he would have actually read the decision because the decision is immediately available. When they update the website and they put that thing up on there, there's a link to the PDF of that decision. And I know because on decision days at the ends of these sessions, I tend to hang out over at scotusblog.com and read the running commentary there, which is just really excellent. If you're working, it's difficult to do this, of course, because I'm working, but this is my job. So I get a chance to do that. And I get a really interesting perspective, a little bit broader perspective on some of these cases as a result. And there are other interesting cases that you just don't follow that when the decision drops, you get a little of this thing. There was one, in fact, all of the decisions are interesting in one way or another. Sometimes it's just of limited interest and sometimes it's just technical, but one of them, and I can't remember which one it was, had to do with whether or not an inmate could choose his execution method. And again, this is more of a technical question because some states do allow for this, but this one inmate wanted to choose a firing squad rather than a lethal injection. And the Supreme Court ruled today that he could make that choice. Under the federal law and the state law, he could make that choice. So, Jeff Tunnets, did you know that in the vid you can't see where Tubin's hands were? Well, I was expecting to get some comments about, because I was making fun of CNN's Apple banana ad, and I haven't checked the comments recently, but at least when it first came down, I was convinced I was going to start getting a lot of banana jokes. So actually kind of looking forward to a lot of banana jokes on that. And by the way, I don't know if you guys know this, but we now have the comment sections really only open to VIP members, VIP and VIP Gold members. So it's subscriber only in the comment sections, and as such, it's gotten a little bit cleaned up over the last week or so. That was since we made that change. Yes, there are. I don't know if I don't know if there's a banana joke in there, but people are definitely referring to that little. I think somebody calls him a Peter Puller in the comments. So yeah, hot air working clean. Well, when I'm on hot air, sure. But Samir, you were in the after show last night, so yeah. Hi, is this live chat or pre-recorded? If live, can you wave to me with both of your hands? That's the reason why it says live chat underneath. Now it's live right at the moment, of course, and it will archive as soon as I stop transmitting. But BB, I am live right now. I am not Memorex, so there you go. And normally we're on Facebook too, BB. This is sort of our fallback transmission method is YouTube, but we might need to make it our ongoing transmission method, just because we seem to be having issues with getting the Facebook thing to work. Sounded like the USMC in 1955 and after show last night. Yeah, Dwayne and I were both kind of going blue. We were definitely PG-13 and really, I think, on the hairy edge of R, actually, last night in the after show. But you have to be a Universe member to watch that. Babylon, Iraq. Hey, all right. Well, it's great to have you with us, BB. So I'm going to wave to you with both hands again. I don't know if you're... I'm not sure if you're an American who's over there or if you're an Iraqi that's over there, but either way, you are way welcome here. It's great to have you with us. So, and hopefully everything's fine and good and safe over there. And again, thanks for being with us. That's great. So if you have any questions, BB, feel free to just drop them into the comment section. I'm really just here to answer comments and questions. I'm happy to do. Well, thanks for saying I'm a cool person. And Severe wants to know how's the weather in Babylon, Iraq. By the way, I'd like to know that too. It's about right now it's 99 degrees here, and I'm in Central Texas. So, and I think it's going to edge up just a little higher than that, or maybe this is as hot as it's going to get today, but right now it's 99 degrees here. A dry heat, of course. So, all right. So, Ann McElhaney. Getting back to Ann McElhaney while I'm waiting for any questions or comments from you guys on either side. I'm not sure if Cranky is on the YouTube side now or if he's still just on the Chatasar side. We're not getting a whole lot of... Ed on the cusp. We're not getting a whole lot of stuff over there on the crankytrex.com/chatasar chat room. Don't forget, Cranky T-Rex is on Twitter at Cranky T-Rex. He's also got his own blog, crankytrex.blogspot.com. BB says, I want to ask you, do you think that the U.S. income for individuals in the next 5 years will be affected? Yeah, I mean, I think you're already starting to see that. Wages are still going up. The problem is that inflation's going up faster, right? So it's not a question of wages falling back, because that would be a sign of deflation, which would be really bad. You don't normally see that. You'll see it in times of really serious recessions. So I'm not really thinking that even if we have a recession, you're going to get something that's really going to lower wages. The problem right now is that wage growth isn't keeping up with inflation. So what you have is nominal wages are still going up, but inflation is going up so much faster that the buying power of those nominal wages is eroding. It's dropping. And that impacts lower income households most, right? Because they have the least amount of buying power. If you're making a middle class income, if you're making an upper middle class or upper class income, I mean, unless you're really overextended on your housing situation, which is certainly happens, you're not going to be anywhere nearly as badly impacted by inflation. You might make a couple of different choices from time to time, but yeah, that's what the issue is. And what the Fed's trying to do is it's trying to kill inflation, which will probably stall wage growth, but I don't think it'll send it backwards. I hope, BB, that answers your question. That's what I foresee anyway. And that's true in the near term, and it's true in the longer term too. 1 year, 5 years, 3 years. What the Fed's trying to do is it's trying to draw down inflation to its normal 2% level so that wage growth will at least slightly exceed that. Normal wage growth will at least slightly exceed that. And I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to, I don't know if they'll succeed, but I think at least in that sense, I don't see a lot of risk to wages. I think that right now wages would have an upside. The only employment might have a risk. Many economic specialists are saying different. The purchase power of the people will decline. But well, again, so you're getting to purchasing power, buying power, right? So nominal wages are still going up. Inflation gets out way ahead of it. So the purchasing power, buying power erodes. That's going on right now. I don't know if it's declined by 50%. I don't think it is. But I'd say you've seen inflation rates at around 8% for several months in a row, right? Wage growth has been, from what I recall from the employment reports, around 5% for the last year or so. So, I mean, that's not, you don't just simply subtract one from the other. I think that's actually more of a logarithmic calculation. But maybe we've eroded 7, 8, 9% buying power on static wages. Jeff Dennis, based on her performance yesterday, do you think an NBA team will sign Camel? Do you think inflation can be curbed while fuel remains at $5 plus a gallon? Well, if it remained at $5 a gallon, that would be one thing. But the problem is it's not remaining at $5 a gallon. It keeps going up. And that is a supply issue. That's completely a supply issue. You need more supply to deal with the demand that you've got going. And that's the reason why a gas tax holiday is pouring gasoline on a fire, not to be too punish about this, but that is something that stokes demand and does nothing to address supply, which means that you're going to make a situation worse. All for a very, very small benefit. I saw something today. It's going to be less than $40 per household over the 3-month period that they're talking about. In the meantime, that will keep sending the prices up over in, I'll keep sending the prices up at the gas pump. It's a non-solution. In fact, if anything, it's going to exacerbate the issue. And that's really what the problem is with that gas tax holiday. It doesn't do anything. I mean, I don't agree with Barack Obama on a hell of a lot of things, but he was right about the effect of a gas tax holiday in 2008. And that hasn't changed. It doesn't fix anything. We had a supply. I mean, he didn't believe we had a supply issue in 2008. His solution was, well, all we need to do is, move. And this is Joe Biden saying, all we need to do is move people off to other forms of energy. But we don't have the infrastructure for that. And we're not going to probably for at least another 10 to 15 years, even if those alternate energy sources actually become robust enough to replace the energy that we use in the forms of gasoline, natural gas, coal, all of those things. We get a tremendous amount of energy out of those. We don't have anything near to that in scale, even with all the renewables combined. The only way that you could really do it without fossil fuels is to build a whole bunch of nuclear power plants, which are scalable, which are a lot safer than they used to be. And yeah. RN, do you think, I can't believe our idiot in chief hasn't asked the American public to conserve on fuel consumption. Well, that's coming up next. I mean, this is the Malaise playbook. So yeah, that's coming up next. I mean, and the reason why he hasn't done that is because it's right out of the Malaise playbook. I mean, this was Jimmy Carter in 1979. We need to wear sweaters inside the house during the winters. Americans have to accept the limits of, our ability to generate energy. We don't have those limits. Those limits are entirely self-imposed. We didn't have those limits before January 2021. Yeah, it would be political suicide for Joe Biden to get on to say everybody's got to start conserving energy. And that's the reason why he's not saying it. It's one of the few smart things that he's figured out so far. And I'm not even sure he's going to figure it out. I think maybe the White House is just keeping him from adding that to there. But I'll bet you that that's going to be something. Here in Iraq, my wage was $600 a month as 10 years mathematician. Yeah, I heard that too. Government devalued the currency. My salary now is $500. That's one thing that U.S. doesn't do, or at least hasn't done, is devalue its currency. And Jeff, it's exasperated. Are you talking about Jeffrey Toobin again? We generally don't do that. In fact, I'm not sure that we've ever done that to the dollar. And one of the reasons is because, it's the reserve currency and we don't want to chase people out of the reserve currency. Now that might happen anyway, but maybe Severe can check me on this, but I don't believe that, at least in the modern era, that the U.S. government has ever deliberately devalued the dollar. And so unless they find more demand, they need to slow down. Unless they find more supply. Well, it's not even a matter of finding more supply. We know where the supply's at. We just, the government policies are making it impossible for us to access it because it's going to take a crap load of capital to get to it. And that capital investment has to stretch out over several years. And if the same government that wants the supply is also telling the oil companies that they're going to shut them down over the next few years, they're not going to invest the money in it. That's what the problem is. Severe says, I have to bail, but he says, that's my recollection as well for what it's worth. And BB says, yeah, Chinese currency, the same thing. Yeah, I mean, again, lots of other nations devalue their currency. China plays with its currency value all the time. And it frustrates G7 and G20 nations because they're doing it to manipulate currency for their advantage. Well, which is, I guess, maybe it's a legit thing to do for a sovereign nation who's not terribly interested in playing by the same rules as everybody else. But I don't think I think a U.S. administration that said we need to devalue the dollar to deal with whatever would be an administration that would find itself tossed out of office almost immediately. And what about your debts, national debt? Yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem, right? Is that we have an irrational approach to national debt. We have way too much national debt. We really have no way to pay it off. We're getting to a point where we can't even really make the interest payments without borrowing money to do that. I don't disagree with you, BB. It's a unsustainable, irreconcilable direction that we're in. So it's very possible at some point that you'll see that sort of devaluation in order to deal with a debt crisis. Will it happen? It could. I'm just saying that there's no precedent for it in American history that I'm aware of, and it's certainly not in my lifetime. And I don't think it's been true since Bretton Woods, which was right after or during World War II. And I don't think it's actually been even contemplated for a long period before that. So again, are these things that could happen? Yes. I mean, I'm not going to say that's impossible, but I'm saying the politics of that would be so poisonous that the party of the administration that did it would be ruined for a generation or more. So yeah, good question though. Really good question. Sorry that you're going through that too. And that's a sharp devaluation too. What you're talking about is a sharp devaluation. I mean, if you're going from 600 to 500 to the buying power equivalent of 500, that's a 16% devaluation. And the inflation erosion that we're getting on wages here is nothing like that. It's not on that scale. Your scale is far worse than what's happening here. But yeah, the next item will be so difficult worldwide. Yeah, I don't doubt it. I think we're heading into recession across the globe. I think we're going to go into a global recession. Well, recessions tend to be global anyway, because economies are so interlocked now. So, well, BB, thanks for being such a great commenter here, and thanks for sharing your experiences. I'm going to have to wrap things up here because unfortunately we got started late, and I have a couple of tasks that I have to do for my wife. Do I think the rumors about the Pope quitting is true? No. No, I don't. Not right at the moment, and I don't think really. I mean, yes, I understand he's having physical problems. I know he's in a wheelchair from time to time. He also just officially launched his courier reform. In order to make that stick, he's going to have to be around a while. And I think he said something the other day that he's going to be doing this as long as the Lord lets him do it. So, no, I don't think that that's the case. And I think the people around him who have had to deal with a two-pope existence, which has been very complicated at the Vatican, would probably walk out en masse if Pope Francis even hinted that he might be going the emeritus route anytime soon. I have no idea why Skype is sending calls through when I'm on away, but I guess I need to be on Do Not Disturb. I'm getting bogus calls on Skype. How many people are getting bogus calls on Skype? Because I'm getting a lot of them. Just over the last couple of days. Just seems to be out of the Los Angeles area codes, too. So, if anybody really wants to get in touch with me, they can email me. That's what I say. Anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. BB in Babylon, Iraq, thank you so much for being with us today. Jeff Dunnitz, Severe, who's left, Supply Guy, who was around, and let's see, who else? RN. RN was here, too. And Supply Guy says, I can't remember the last time I turned on Skype. Yeah. And over on the crankytrex.com/chat is our chat room. CrankyTrex at CrankyTrex on Twitter. CrankyTrex.blogspot.com. Let's play just a little bit of walking music here while we're going out. Don't forget to download the podcasts. You can get the YouTube version of it. That's embedded in the show post. You can also download the Spotify and Apple Podcast versions of it from hotair.com, and the Ed Morrissey Show at the top is where you can find that. Just click on that. And don't forget to keep looking at Hot Air because we've got more posts coming up. I don't have anything more on Jeffrey Toobin. Sorry. Don't have any Toobin stuff coming up, but there's still plenty of other stuff coming up from Alla Pundit, Karen Townsend, and myself. And John's on vacation, so. Jeff says, I haven't opened Skype in ages. Well, I use it for the stuff with Dwayne, like the after show. He connects with Skype. So I always have it running, but I don't send anybody there any longer. It's been years since I've given out that number for anybody to contact me, so make sure you're on time for your wife. Yes, thanks, RN. That's really good advice. On that note, I will say thank you to everybody. We'll do something on Tuesday. We'll figure out what the Facebook issues were, or we'll just come back to YouTube or Twitter. So just stay tuned. Keep an eye out for what's coming up next on hotair.com and the Ed Morrissey Show. Until then, have yourselves a great weekend, and don't miss a minute of the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. We'll see you later, folks.